Today we are going to deal with a very famous poem by Robert Lee Frost. The name of the poem is The Road Not Taken. Before I begin, let me brief you about the poet. Robert Lee Frost was an American poet. He was born on March 26, 1874 and died on 29 January 1963. His work was initially published in England before it was published in America. He was known for his realistic depictions of rural life and his command of American colloquial speech. Frost frequently wrote about settings from rural life in New England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime and is the only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. He was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in 1960 for his poetic works. On July 22, 1961, Frost was named the Poet Laureate of Vermont. This poem is based on a very common experience, the choice that everyone has to make. The choices that we make to shape our character, the choices that decide our destiny. In this poem, The Road Not Taken, the road symbolizes our life. The poet says that the path that we don't choose in our life is the road not taken. He describes his feelings about that choice that he had left in the past. The path which we have chosen decides our future, our destination. The important message that the poet wants to give us is that the choice that we make has an impact on our future, and if we make a wrong choice, we regret it. But we cannot go back on it. So, we must be wise while making our choices. Now, let us see the poem in detail, stanza-wise. Let's go to the first stanza. It has got 5 lines. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. We should know some meanings of the words, meanings of certain words in this poem, in this stanza. That is the word diverged, separated, and took a different direction. Then yellow wood, a forest which comprising yellow leaves. Of course, all these words have got deeper meaning for them. The external meaning of these words are given. Undergrowth is the other word. Dense growth of plants and bushes in the forest. Let's see the stanza in detail. Once the poet was walking down a road and then there was a diversion. There were 2 different paths and he had to choose one out of them. The poet says that as he was one person, he could travel on one road only. He had to choose one out of these 2 roads. Yellow wood means a forest with leaves which are wearing out, and they have turned yellow in color. This symbolizes the season autumn. It represents a world which is full of people, where people have been living for many years. They represent people who are older and more experienced than the poet. The poet kept standing there and looked at the path very carefully, as far as he could see it. Before taking the path, he wanted to know how it was. Was it suitable for him or not? He was able to see the path till where it covered, after which it was It curved as after it was covered with trees and was hidden. It happens in our life also. When we have choices, we have alternatives. But we have to choose only one out of them. We take time to think about the pros and cons, the aftermaths, the results of our action, whether it is suitable for us or not. And only then we take a decision on which path we should travel, which path we have to choose. Second stanza. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wandered where. Though, as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. In this stanza also we have got certain words. We have to know the meanings of them. Fair. Here, fair can say as good as the other. Claim or better option. Grassy. Here we can say filled with grass, which means unused. And wandered where had not been used. Something that has not been used. Here the meaning of that word. The poet kept on looking at one path for a long time to check if it is the right path for him or not. And then he decided and started walking on another path because he felt that both the paths were equally good. Both roads were identical. There was no special reason to take either road. He says, just as fair. So he felt that both paths were equally good and started walking on one of them. He adds that maybe he felt that the path was better for him. So he chooses it. As it had grass on it, he thought it was unused, which was not used by any. Not many people had walked on this path earlier. That is why he chose that grassy path. And wandered where means that it was not walked over by many people. After he walked on the path for some distance, he realized that both the paths were the same. They had been worn out the same way. Both the paths were similar and worn out. Even in our life, we take many paths or options, but all of them have the same benefits, disadvantages, problems, challenges, and we must face them all. We think that we are choosing a better option. In reality, there is no better option. All the options are the same. Let's come to the next stanza, stanza 3. And both that morning lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. Here, the word trodden, walked over. The poet says that both paths were similar that morning. Both had leaves on them, and no one had stepped on them as they were still green in color. He decided that day he would take one path and keep the other path for another day. Although he knew one way leads on to another way and there is no return in the journey of life. He knew that he could not go back on that choice that he had made. Similarly, in our life also, we have to make choices and we will be given options. From those given options, we have to make choices. We must keep on moving ahead with that option, and we never get a chance to come back and take the other option that we had left earlier. Stanza 4. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Here, two words, the word sigh and the word hence. Sigh, it means deep breath of relief. And hence, here we can say, in the future. He says that in the future, he will take a deep breath and say that once upon a time, he had reached such a point in his life that there were two options for him, and he travelled on that road which had been travelled upon by lesser number of people. That decision of his decided his future. Similarly, in our life, in your life, when you grow up in future, then you will say that once upon a time, when you were young, you had options. The choice that you made you what you have become of it today. This is a very strong message for all of us by Robert Lee Frost. What is that message? We should be wise and be very careful while making choices. Choices out of the options that we have been given in our life. Because our future depends on the choices that we make in our life. That's all the poem. Before I conclude, before I give you the summary of the poem, let me talk about something about the poetic devices that are used in this poem. Rhyme scheme of the poem. You know what is rhyme scheme? We've studied that. Still, I'll remind you of that once again. Rhyme scheme is the pattern of rhymes at the end of each line of a poem or a song. It is usually referred to by using letters to indicate which lines rhyme. Lines designated with the same letter all rhyme with each other. The poem, The Road Not Taken, has got a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, A, B. A, B, A, A, B. The other poetic device that is used by Robert Frost in this poem is alliteration. Wandered where, the W sound, the sound repeating in consecutive lines. The words of consecutive words are with the same sound, like W, wandered where. First for F sound, though, that, the sound repeated. Let us see the summary of the poem. In this poem, the poet says that once he was walking down the road and reached a split of the road. He could walk over one of the paths only. He took time to choose the right path. He inspected them to decide which was the better option, and then chose the one which seemed less walked over. He kept the other for another day, although he knew that he would never get a chance to come back and to walk over that. He would go further on the chosen path and not get a chance to get back to the beginning and to use the path he left once again. He will not get that option, get that chance. As he walked on the chosen path, he realized that both the paths were similar. He felt that his future depends on the choice that he made. That's all the poem. Thanks for watching.